Welcome back to The Laundry List. I am your host, Todd, and we have a very special guest today. Somebody I've known for many, many years. I think going back probably 20 years. And I'm excited to have him. But before we get too deep into our talk with Paul, we're going to read the Laundry List, which is the name of our podcast, the traits that we acquired when we were young that we tend to carry with us into adulthood. And Charles, do you want to take it away?
Sure. If you identify with any of these, keep listening, keep tuning in. If you're like Paul and you have all of these, then you get to become a guest. Number one, we became isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. Number two, we became approval seekers and lost our identity in the process. Number three, we are frightened by angry people and any personal criticism. Number four, we either became alcoholics, marry them, or both, or find another compulsive personality such as a workaholic to fulfill our sick abandonment needs. Number five, we live life from the viewpoint of victims, and we are attracted by that weakness in our love and friendship relationships. Number six, we have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, and it's easier for us to be concerned with others rather than ourselves, and this enables us to not look too closely at our own faults. Number seven, we get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves instead of giving in to others. Number eight, we became addicted to excitement. Number nine, we confuse love and pity and tend to love people we can pity and ultimately rescue. Number 10, we have stuffed our feelings from our traumatic childhood and have lost the ability to feel or express our feelings because it hurts so much. And that's also known as denial. Number 11, we judge ourselves harshly and have a very low sense of self-esteem. Number 12, we are dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment and will do anything in this world to hold on to a relationship in order not to experience those painful abandonment feelings. And we often receive those by living with sick people who were never there for us emotionally. 13, alcoholism is a family disease, and we became para-alcoholics and took on the characteristics of that disease, even though we never picked up a drink. And finally, para-alcoholics, also known as codependents, are reactors rather than actors.
Charles, very good job. Or should I say Chuck? Blake, you want to read the promises?
Yeah, so these are the promises. That's what you had. This is what you get. 1, we discover our real identity by loving and accepting ourselves. 2, our self-esteem will increase as we give ourselves approval on a daily basis. 3, fear of authority figures and the need to people please will leave us. 4, our ability to share intimacy will grow inside us. 5, as we face our abandonment issues, we will be attracted by strengths and become more tolerant of our weaknesses. 6, we will enjoy feeling stable, peaceful, and financially secure. 7, we will learn how to play and have fun in our lives. 8, we will choose to love people who can love and be responsible for themselves. 9, healthy boundaries and limits will become easier for us to set. 10, fears of failure and success will leave us as we intuitively make healthier choices. 11, with help from our ACA support group, we will slowly release our dysfunctional behaviors. 12, gradually with our higher powers' help, we will learn to expect the best and get it.
Thank you, Blake. Well, I'd like to welcome our good friend Paul O, who I've known. Paulie, how long have I known you? When was I hanging out with you when you were living on Thomas there?
Gosh, I think you were right. It was early 2000s.
Yeah, early 2000s. And just have so much in common with you. And, you know, one of the laundry list traits is we're addicted to excitement. And, you know, we're more concerned with others than ourselves. I mean, some of these laundry list traits, I don't know if you could identify with some of those, but, you know, we talk a lot about on this podcast on some of those that really resonate with us. And I know you and I have had a lot of conversations with chaos and becoming addicted to that and just how that feels in the body, mind, and spirit. And even if we don't want to get rid of it, we just like sometimes the chaos we can't get rid of. You know, we're just addicted to that excitement. So welcome to the podcast. You know, there's no agenda here. We just kind of talk and shoot the shit about childhood relationships that you currently have. And I just want to tell you like how proud I am of you, because a lot of times that I was hanging out with you back in the day, it's like it was a struggle, you know, and now you are married with kids and and have a career, and you're like a pillar and helpful in society and helping others. You're not a taker anymore. You're a giver. And I just want to say congratulations. I'm super proud of you and glad to be your friend.
God, I appreciate that, man. And likewise, that's awesome.
So yeah, let's just get into it. Give us a little description on your childhood and kind of what happened and some of the crazy shit that went down, and how'd you kind of deal with that, and how are you dealing with relationships today and becoming your better self, your higher self?
Yeah. Hopefully I can unpack it in a linear direction. Gosh, where does it start? Certainly grew up obviously in an alcoholic home, right? It was beyond even our immediate home. It was, we were very much a generational family as it relates to alcoholism. And then naturally, as it relates to the ACA portion of this, right? Which in my opinion, in my experience, has held the most gravity, right? I mean, I myself am a recovering alcoholic, gratefully today, but there was something missing, right? You get off that pink cloud in getting sober, and then it's like, okay, well, there's still a void, right? And it relates to all of the laundry list and my experience with those, because as Charles mentioned, each one of those describes me to a T. And the first time that I read those, I mean, it was terrifying, but there was such a weight lifted, simultaneously that, I think all of us, no matter what we believe, we're searching for who we are in this life, right? I know I was. And when I latched on to what I was shown through the alcoholic environment that I grew up in, that's all I knew. That's how I knew to survive. So,
and that was the solution. I mean, most people, alcohol is the solution, because they don't have to feel, they don't have to tell the truth. They don't have to be vulnerable. When you hide behind alcohol, it's like a scapegoat for you.
100%. 100%. And when your brain locks onto that, it's a really deadly combination. So I certainly know how lucky I am to be on this side of it, and certainly luckier to really be diving into certainly all those things that really affect who I am and have gotten in the way of me figuring out and reaching my potential, which is why we're here today. So to continue my story, it was, I can remember from a very early age having some very dramatic fears, right? And I still have some of my original memories that relate back to the ages of 4 to 6, where if I'm looking at it now as an adult, it's like, holy crap. I see it in my daughter, right? I see the fears that she has. And that's me or my wife and I being parents that are very selective about the inputs that she has access to, that we're aware of, right? My inputs at 6 years old, I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street, right? I was watching and taking stuff in that was just, it's awful for any human being. But then you throw that kind of fuel on top of an already potent fear-based mind. I mean, I spiraled out of control. And then, I'm not getting all this stuff that I'm ingesting is terrible for me, right? From those inputs on the movie, and then anything else I could get my hands on. But, then not learning, growing up in a very controlling environment, which was my dad, right? I mean, he did everything for us, right? And he did everything for us. If I wasn't able to write a paper, he'd write it for me, right? He did a lot of things that you go, man, that's a pretty cool dad. But that didn't teach me how to have practical skills in the world and how to take care of myself, right? How to have those real practical survival skills. But he was very controlling, did everything for us. And then the most damaging of that was that, I'd come to him and say, hey, I feel sad about this. And he'd immediately say, no, you don't feel sad, right? So at an early age, I didn't learn how to appropriately digest my emotions, right? And that's a large part of this for me.
Not only that, it sounds like based on your dad's comment that it was shameful to have feelings based on that
double-edged sword, both ways.
Yeah.
100%. So growing up in that controlling environment, right? And again, he didn't mean to hurt me in that regard, but it's very damaging, right? He was trying to say, don't feel sad about this. But instead, the messaging we absorb at an early age, or at least the one I did, was it's not okay for you to feel that way.
Right.
Right. So, fast forwarding, by the time I was 10, the obvious solution was alcohol. And, that took me on a whole, just crazy ride over about 15 to 20 years. And then really the piece as it relates to this conversation is that my dad started to use me as an excuse to party and drink, right? And, he would be able to come home and continue to drink and let my friends and I at a very early age drink, right? I'm not unique in that regard. I know that. Todd, you were probably the same, but, still very confusing, right? On top of which is not really relevant, or maybe it is, but my father also is a homosexual, right? And nothing against homosexuals or the gay community here. But again, the piece that plays, and then I think it is in line with the overall theme of just total confusion and chaos, which you mentioned, right? I wasn't given any practical skills. My father didn't know how to attach or connect to me in an emotional, meaningful, quote unquote, present way, right? I mean, and the list goes on. But, my therapist said it best, and I'll shut up for a second. My therapist said, I gave him an example. I said, well, when I was young, and my siblings and I used to huddle together, right? We go to bed in our separate rooms, but then we'd huddle together after the lights were turned off. We'd huddle together on the floor, right? Kind of banded together. And when I told him that, I was telling him that just talking to him. And his response to that was, you didn't feel safe in your home. And I was like, might be a little heavy, but the more I thought about it, it was like, yeah, makes sense. I did not feel safe or secure in the home that I grew up in. And that's a problem.
And so that feeling that you had of not feeling safe, that anxiety, that pit in the stomach, that like rapid heartbeat, the anxiety, where was that getting replayed as an adult, while you were drinking or when you were sober? Like, when does that get played out? Like when you're fucking up at work, when you're like in trouble with your wife, like where does that get played out where you start feeling you're not safe anymore?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great question, and I don't know if I can answer it as well as I would like to, but I mean, certainly the insecurity gets doused with the booze and, completely reckless behavior, right? Not knowing how to in a healthy way, address how I'm feeling about whatever it may be. But then as it relates to even when I was sober, like certainly two blanket kind of ways that it affected me or how I dealt with my relationships, which, oh, by the way, at 45 years old, I think my biggest issue as it relates to all this is I'm not good at relationships. I don't really have the first clue about how to be good at a relationship. Now, I've come a long way. I guess I could have said that, 5, 6, 7 years ago before I found ACA. Now I've gotten a lot better, have a long way to go. And maybe I never get to where I think I can, but I can certainly make some progress. But it's not knowing how to be real, right? So how did it play out? I was never truly myself. I think really I've only truly been myself and really comfortable in my own skin, knowing the truth about me and why I am and where I come from, which is the laundry list. Only in the last couple of years have I been able to just be completely authentic and real, right? To the best of my ability. And that's a huge progression for me.
And that feels good, doesn't it? Just to
does.
tell the truth.
It does.
And like not people please and not like just trying to get other people to like you and, say the things that you think they want to hear. Because then you don't know who you are. You're just a constant liar about everything you stand for and everything you believe in because you're just full of shit. And then the minute you're not with that person, you start talking shit about him. Oh, that guy's a horrible boss. He's a horrible, friend. He's just screwing me over. But in front of the person, you're like, oh, I love you. You're so great. So you're full of shit to everybody, right? And it's just so unsettling, and because you don't stand for anything and you don't know who you are. And it took me probably till your age to really start figuring that shit out. And like, you know what? I don't care if people like me or not. This is who I am. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. And I'm going to stand for something and just stop living the lie, just stop living the lie. And that's where there's some peace and some serenity and some quiet. But like the ACA book tells us, like that childhood meditation is so key for me because every time I get uncomfortable and every time I'm insecure and I start freaking out and start shaming myself and feeling like I'm out of control, I do that childhood meditation where it talks about it in the Red Book. And I start reparenting my little boy because my little boy, 8, 9 years old, he's the one who was hurt. 55-year-old Todd's not hurt. It's the little boy who's hurt. And it's my job as an adult to take care of that little boy and reparent that little boy and love him, make him feel safe. Because alcohol ain't going to fix it anymore. Drugs ain't going to fix it anymore. Sex ain't going to fix it anymore. Money's not going to fix it anymore. I got to reparent and love myself, period. I'm coming into this world alone. I'm leaving alone. So I got to connect with my higher self and my, my beautiful higher eternal self. Right.
Yeah, that's amazing, Todd. And it's funny you mentioned you were hard to be around, in those first days. And it's such a gift. It's very scary, but it's such a gift for me to have seen now or am able to see how delusional I was. Oh my gosh, I had zero identity. And if I'm only at 25% identity right now, holy crap, it feels like 200%, right? And if I don't get much more beyond where I'm at now, I'm grateful because the revelation is real. The epiphany has been kind of multi-pieced, kind of a 10-part series, if you will. But man, what a relief, literally a physical relief. Mm-hmm. Everything you mentioned, and then just learning the truth about yourself. Certainly the greatest gift I've ever received.
Yeah, because I'm trying to get, like you just mentioned, I'm trying to get to a place where the ups and downs of life are more flatlined. So, there's not the high highs and the low lows. It's just sort of like I get to enjoy and be grateful for all facets of my life and not try to judge the good or the bad. There is no good or bad. Life just comes at me. So if my wife's mad at me, it has probably nothing to do with me. And if it does, she'll let me know. Same with business, and it's like, I can't go around trying to make sure people treat me nice and kind and like are like loving me. That's not my job. That's trying to control people, places, and things around me. And it's such a blessing. And I think such a level of peace to be able to just live life and just not judge it, not judge myself and not judge others and not judge the events happening. So I'd love to hear a little bit from Blake because, I know you have a relationship with Blake and maybe you can help Blake out right now because God knows he needs it. No, Blake's my boy. He's doing unbelievable. And,
I think the roles are reversed when, Todd talks about getting to see you when you're just a few days sober. I mean, that was the first time I met you. I'm this guy that's, probably smells really bad jumping in your car because he's 4 days sober, and he's, when we're going to Mexico. I mean, that was the first time I ever met Paul.
Was that the
it
Agua
was
Prieta?
an
Agua
interesting,
Prieta,
it was
yeah.
an interesting engagement.
Yeah, it was him, Chris Carpenter, aka Joel Osteen, and me in the back seat. And I was like, we're going to Mexico, I guess.
I wasn't on that trip, was I?
You were. You
I
came
was?
later, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You showed up later, T. And Ross was with us on the front end there to track you down.
Yeah.
He actually jumped out of a moving car.
Yeah, because I was walking down the street to
That
grab
sounds
me.
like Ross.
That was like
Yeah,
that was
totally
almost
hilarious. Ross D.
almost 7 years ago. Because I'll have 7 years tomorrow. So
That's crazy.
Awesome.
yeah.
That's crazy. So you sparked to something else, Blake, before you get going, if that's the next route. But T, like you sparked something, what you said. The biggest issue I have today, or one of the biggest issues I have, is not feeling guilty for finding peace, right? When I'm present, right, with my kid, and we've got another one on the way. We'll have 2 soon, gratefully.
Congratulations.
Or with my wife, it's amazing that when I'm present and I'm trying to, grab that peace that this life can give you, and not worrying about the environmental stuff, typically always work for me. Right. It's being okay with, hey, I'm being present with my family right now. I'm doing something that is truly valuable to myself and to the other human beings that I'm in this with. Yet I feel guilty about, I could be sending maybe one more email. I could be reaching out to another investor real quick. Like, it's really hard for me not to feel guilty about just those peaceful moments. So I'm working on that.
Being in the moment.
Yeah.
I'm working on that too. And I think that's something I'll be working on till the very end. I mean, I was in an all-day meeting today, and I have like 15 texts of people asking me questions and want me to do things. And I won't get back to them till probably tonight, where before I would interrupt my meeting or do it during the meeting. This guy flew in just for me and Charles, and it would have been rude. And I didn't answer any of those, probably 15 or more texts, and it's practice. It's practice. Yeah. But it is, being in the moment is where life happens. Life is just a bunch of thoughts in my mind. That's where life happens. And everyone's thoughts are different. Everyone's reality is different from the same situation.
The one question, not to throw a wrench in things, but the one question I would ask you, Paul, is if I think of one guy who, is upbeat, positive all the time, right? And maybe that's just my perception of you, but what is your inner talk track like? Is that like, do you consciously put forth effort to, talk about, like, cancel out the inner critic, or is that not something that you struggle with that like I do?
No, I have to. I have to trust my second or even third thought. And I think the more that, for me, I've done ACA, that second and or third thought become very clear, right? Because the first thought about anything is always negative, right? And if you continue to work the ACA muscle, that second and third thought being, no, that's the first thought. Cancel that. It's not true, right? 90% of my first thoughts are not based in reality. I mean, that's kind of scary, right?
And then the other 10%.
But that's my experience. So it's that second or third thought, absolutely having to cancel out the negative one.
Appreciate it.
And I'm kind of spring loaded, right? Like, I wake up, I've got energy, right? So that's real. What I've been trying to do over the last several years is not have to, I love people, I love energy, but I too suffer from, eating like crap, which takes away from that energy, or not exercising, right? Being inconsistent. Either way, I'm trying to just get better about being authentic, and I am a positive, upbeat person for real. That's my energy. However, when I'm not, I don't have to feel guilty about that, right? Because most people are like, whoa, he's in a bad mood. Geez, that's weird. And it's like, yeah, I get in a bad mood too. And I just have to be authentic about it.
Yeah.
Chuck?
Charles?
Chuck here. Paul, do you remember Paul and I were roommates? We lived together.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we lived together for a period. And for anyone listening that thinks
at Hainers.
what's that?
At,
No, not at
No?
Hainers. We had an apartment together.
Oh, wow.
And I don't even remember the dates of this, Paul, but I know it occurred. And for those listening that you feel hopeless, I mean, Paul couldn't drive. I shouldn't have been driving. We're living together, and at the time, we're trying to get sober. And I remember always thinking that we were so similar, Paul. And you were drinking those little small bottles of wine. Do you remember this? But still thinking that you were sober because it was just the small bottle of wine.
You can't get drunk off
Right,
those.
right. And I remember opening up the trash can one day, and we're both sober, and it's filled with all these small bottles of wine. And I was thinking, well, if this is working for Paul, right, it's got to work for me too. So I went to the Circle K. I got the small bottles, and I mean, ultimately, what amazing transition that's taken place in our lives. I'm with you. You hit something big, right? You and I were always we were alcoholics. We go into AA. We get sober, but there's still something more. There's still something more that we need, and we are finding that in this. And I know you. I've met your wife. I know you have this beautiful, incredible partner now, and I'm happy to hear about the children. And I believe that any type of relationship, whether it's business, friendship, marriage, is impossible if we're suffering from any of those 14 traits. It's impossible to have a healthy relationship. It's going to be bullshit. It's going to be uncomfortable. If you were to attribute what the biggest transformation in you is, because the Paul that and the Charles that used to hang out together, great guys, but impossible to have a good, healthy, meaningful relationship. If you can attribute it to one thing, one piece of the work that you've done that has led to a change within you that you attribute to this beautiful new relationship that you have that's been going strong for so long, what would that be?
Great question. And I think this is a good or right answer. But, I finally had to, when I relapsed after 8 years, it was real easy for me to point the finger at why that was, right? And I hadn't even sniffed ACA yet. So it all makes sense. But, as I was in relapse mode, my wife was just finally like, you need to go see a therapist about your dad. Your dad is certainly your biggest issue, right? And I was like, well, no, I mean, I dealt with that. Obviously not, right? How I dealt with it was just by never dealing with it, right? And if you don't go back home and see your folks, if you don't see it, right, then you don't feel it. But every now and then it would creep back in for whatever reason, whether it was a call or a text. And obviously it led me down, the path to drink again. And this was, 5-6 years ago. But the therapist that I saw, who you guys probably know, great human being. And what he said to me was what unlocked everything. And he said, you're not your dad and you don't have to be like your dad. And it was just like, boom. Right. And those chains that we talk about, whether it's shame, guilt, or whatever else is attached to the other end. I mean, you guys have felt it. It literally, like one of those chains just snapped loose. And it was just like, wow. Right. And the realization of that was the most meaningful kind of first step for me.
Yeah. You just triggered something in me, which, I remember when I finally got the courage to start telling my dad how I really feel. And I just started doing that in my 40s and I do it today in my 50s, but I don't do it all the time, but it's so gratifying and builds confidence and self-esteem in me to tell him how I really feel instead of being a people pleaser and a cheerleader to him and letting him say and do things that might be hurtful. Right. And that's new behavior, all from ACA, of finding my true self and my inner peace and trying to be, true. I mean, if someone said those things to me that wasn't my dad, I'd be like, dude, what the fuck, man? You should, why are you saying that shit? But when it's my dad or my mom, I'd be like, oh, that's dad just being dad, or that's mom just being mom. And burying bad behavior and bad, bad experiences under the rug instead of like speaking up. So because I know a lot of your stories with you and your dad. I mean, have you had those conversations with dad? That's not appropriate, and I don't think you should be saying that. Or here's how I feel. Like, do you stand up for yourself now with your relationship with your dad?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And part of that, and it's also that relationship is still very odd and strained because, I mean, he lives on the streets, right? He had a leg amputated a couple years ago. I mean, he's on the streets. He's in a wheelchair. Now that I'm back in Missouri, all my friends text me, "Hey, saw your dad at the Target the other day." It's like, yeah, I appreciate it. And, no cause for concern. This has been our reality for 10 years. But specifically, right? Like, I think the biggest thing with my dad and I that we did, right? Because it's still very hard and toxic to have a real conversation with him. Now, if he was dry, right? If he was off the booze and the drugs, maybe, just maybe, we could have a sort of real conversation, but that's off the cards, right? He's in outer space right now.
Yeah.
However, what we did do a couple of times in those, like, as we caught those slivers of real moments together, typically over the phone, because I was in Arizona and he was wherever he was, but we forgave each other, right? I asked for his forgiveness and he asked for mine, and it was totally real. It was certainly spiritually involved, right? I got that moment with him, even though he probably doesn't remember it. He was lucid in that, 30 seconds. And the fact that we were able to have that connection, for me to say, "Hey man, I know I wasn't a bundle of joy," and for him to reciprocate, and for me to be in total peace with him today. He's the only dad I got. Mm-hmm. So yeah, my dad's on the street corner, but he's still my dad, right?
Exactly.
And I don't let it affect me anymore, again, because of ACA, and just all the benefits from the conversations we're having here, and obviously everything that stems from learning the truth.
Yeah, and the Red Book says we do a blameless and loving inventory of our parents. And the only inventory I knew how to do before was a blameful and hurtful and angry inventory of my parents. So to do a blameless, loving inventory of my parents, to see where I've become them, is a new experience for me. I didn't know how to do that, So that's really new and really helped me get off the victim. Well, I'm like this because my dad was like that. Like, there's no more of that shit.
No.
I can't say I'm like that because my dad was like that or my mom's like that. I got to take full ownership.
And then something you just hit on, Paul, like when you have that, and I relate, when you have that, you're not angry, you're not resentful, you're not wish it was different, relating to your parents or your dad, at least for me, and it sounds like for you, it's this newfound freedom, right? Where if you were still angry and then the friends text you, that would, at least for me, would set me into a whole nother orbit where now it's like, it is what it is. Right. And, I can have compassion, but it's not my job to fix it either.
How significant is that answer as well? It perfectly sums up what we're trying to do here. The question was, what was the most significant thing that's occurred within you to have a better relationship with your wife? And the answer was to get right with his father. Where would we ever think that would be the case? And that's about recovering from the family dysfunction, forgiving, and being right with dad. I mean, we have to go backwards in order to go forwards. And that's exactly what this was. I mean, Paul, I love that answer. It's like my relationship, my sobriety, my life, I had to get right with the dysfunction that occurred between you and your father. I mean, that's listeners and everyone that tunes in. That's where my turning point was. It was like, hey, you want a better now? Let's go get right with all the crap that you're hiding from, misremembering, forgetting, stonewalling, the shit that when the counselor or psychiatrist or therapist, no matter how good, says, "So tell me about your childhood, Charles." Oh, it was great. It was wonderful, right? But it's the stuff that we missed in our 4-step. It's the stuff that we miss constantly when we're asked about. So I love that answer, Paul. And you're right.
Yeah,
You're like,
thank
I
you.
think I have the right answer. That was powerful stuff.
And Todd said it too, like Charles, thank you. Yes, it was for me for sure. But I mean, like you said, Todd, it's not our fault, but it's our responsibility.
Right.
And that's the piece that sucks, right? Because we do want to sit here and say, well, look, I mean, I got a bad hand here. But no one's ever going to come and go, holy shit, man, you got a terrible hand. Right. Get a chopper in here. Let's figure something out. We got to airback this guy out of here. Right. That's what I expect to happen. But it's like, no, we all get
The victim is so easy
it's
to
just
play.
different layers of dysfunction, right? We all deal with it.
Victim is so easy to play and so comfortable.
Oh man.
Like my mom used to always say, the world owes you nothing and don't expect anything from the world. Go out and get it yourself. And my wife used to say that to my boys when they were young too, my ex-wife. And it's so easy for me to think like, no, that's bullshit. My dad fucked me over. My dad, screwed me. My mom was mean. My ex-wife left me. I mean, it's easy to just play that victim and just run down that. And all I'm doing is robbing myself of having a happy, joyous experience in life. That's all I'm doing. No one else is suffering. I'm creating a life that is not that euphoria that I read about in the Bible and other places. I'm not getting that. I'm getting the poor me's, the poor me's.
Yeah, the resentments, unfortunately, right? Even if they're justified, like they only hurt you, right? That whole process and dynamic in the universe really sucks. But
I find everyone's doing the best they fucking can. It's like we're all doing the best we can.
Yeah, that's such a great outlook to have with everyone.
It really is.
You're giving me your best right now.
Yeah, and and when I see someone who's like really mean to me or really angry or condescending or passive aggressive, I stop now and I look at them and I'm like, I actually feel for you and I'm going to pray for you in my mind. I'm going to send you energy, loving energy, where before I'm like, you want to fucking go there? Let's fucking go there, And now it's like I just diffuse that anger and that excitement and just turn it to compassion and empathy. And I learned that from Morris, Morris, he really helped me with, like you said, spring loaded, the bitch position. It's like he's kind of turned that around to where he's like just loving people that really need the love. Because it's the ones that are angry and blaming and gossiping. They need more love than anybody else, right? And I'm that person all the time. And I need that love and compassion. I don't need more people to be angry and yelling at me and fighting with me. I need to feel unconditional love from people when I'm in a bad spot like that. So why wouldn't they?
So we should start hugging hostile people. Is that what you're saying? They're yelling at us. Just give them a hug. Here, you need this.
That's right.
You need this.
That's right.
Matt, that would be interesting to try all that.
Yeah. Let me know how that goes.
Yeah.
Go give Barty a hug when he's angry.
Yeah, and it's like David Goggins said, which is really what you summed up, T, which is like David Goggins, you look at a guy like him and he's this Terminator, ex-Navy SEAL, and you think, this guy's got zero issues. He's a badass. Well, no, when he's authentic, which is what I love about the technology age and the information age we live in, now we get to see so much more that, gosh, I wish I had when I was 6, 10, and 12. But David Goggins, right, he said, everybody's got their shit, man. Everybody's got it. It's just who is better at covering it up? And it's just like, wow, that's me right there.
And look, I mean, when he was living in that victim role, look how it manifested in his life. He was hundreds of pounds overweight. He was depressed. He couldn't get out of bed and he didn't want to live anymore, and then he just made a decision like, I'm fucking going to stop being the victim. And look at him now. He's living the dream,
Living the dream, being his true, authentic self, which is what we all want to accomplish. And you said it too, like you literally once this, this laundry list rings true for you in whatever fashion, like you see things differently, just like you're seeing those people coming at you. The old Todd would have wanted to stand up, fight, and go to blows, right? But now it's just like they're hurting. Yeah. Right. What a beautiful way to look at interactions, because it all boils down to relationships and people. Right.
No question. And when I look at them and I see myself in them, and I really try to do that now, I have so much more compassion and love, because really we're all the same. We're all the exact same. You know, that eternal part of all of us is the same. And all we got is this ego, you know, which comes and goes in a blink of an eye in our lifetime. And it's like, where'd that ego come from? Well, usually it comes from protection, of fear. Like when I'm scared, my ego figures out how to protect me, or at least it thinks it knows how to protect me, you know? And that's where, when I'm a kid and my parents are screaming and yelling, my ego goes into, okay, let's fix it. Let's get mom to stop yelling and screaming. Let's be really nice to her. Let's clean our room. Let's, you know, tease my sister to create a distraction from their fighting, whatever it is. But the ego is trying to solve fight or flight situations, you know? And today I don't go into the fight. I go into, you know, I try not to go into the fight. I try to go more, if anything, the flight and self-reflect, you know? But prayer and meditation and sending positive love and energy to others is a big piece of like my new experience in today's world. And it really works.
It's real, man. And Eckhart Tolle says it best. He says the ego is the most destructive force in the universe.
Yep.
And then to think about, I mean, my ego is still highly prevalent. It's very difficult to get rid of, right? And that's how I look at it. It's like all of us, whether we're alcoholic or ACA or whatever support group we need to be a part of, or many or several, I believe that it just boils down to what level of selfishness are you individually. I think it's just a selfishness and an ego problem when it all boils down, which we know is true in the groups we're a part of, but it just doesn't make it easy knowing that that's the answer, but it's
yeah. I mean,
crazy.
When I'm scared and freaking out, I want to go back to that 6-year-old boy that wants everyone to make it better.
Mm-hmm. Tell me.
Let's make it better. Tell me what's wrong, Todd. Let's make it better. Oh, you need some money? Here's some money. Oh, you need a hug and love? I'll give you some love and a hug. Whatever you need, I'll make it better. And now it's not anyone's job to do that except my adult self, my higher self, my, you know, we call it our true self in the ACA program. I got to be there and show up for that scared little boy or that angry teenager, which is like you said, come the blows and let's, you know, we're going to go at it. That either one of those, they're both hurting and they both need love and they both need support. So when did you get introduced to ACA and do you still continue that today?
Yeah. So I've got kind of I started with ACA in 2018. And that's now I'm almost 5 years.
Wow.
5 years sober again. And that was it. A friend of ours, Chris H., we were at the Henry. I had just relapsed again. It's like, what's wrong? What's the answer? And he slid the laundry list over to me. And it was just like, right. Yeah. And you know how busy the Henry is. And it was like, everything stopped. And it was like, holy smokes. Right.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning, 2018. And then I went to meetings for a couple of years, meetings that I'm sure you guys are aware of. Morris was a big part of that. Morris is an all-star.
Yep.
And his crew on that Wednesday night up in Scottsdale, if it still exists.
Yep.
But it's that was it. Today, my wife is actually going to ACA meetings here in Missouri. Awesome. I need to start going. I plan to. I do an ACA call with my immediate family every Thursday.
Wow.
So we've gone through the workbook. And we just kind of have open topic meetings. We just typically get on a conference call for an hour. You know, obviously some weeks don't work, but we've been pretty consistent for about a year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. Glad to see you got that. And your aha moment in 2018, my aha moment came when my wife asked for a separation, you know, and I think Blake and Charles's came same thing from the breakup of relationships. And that aha moment is like, I need help. And this laundry list is speaking to my core and I need help. And boy, it feels good to have that moment of clarity.
Yeah. And it's you touched on it. Like a lot, I think for me, I'm, 5-6 years sober and I'm miserable and I need something. And, this, no matter what I do, drinking isn't the problem anymore. And now I need to find a new solution for a way to live. And, I'm so happy that I was able to find it.
Yep. Charles, what else you got for Paulo?
Paul, you look great.
He does. He looks
so
amazing.
good.
I mean, you look so
Yeah.
good.
Thank you, gents.
You should give up the real estate career and just go into male modeling. I'll back you.
I'll take it. I'll take it. If there's some sort of Zoom modeling out there, I'm all over it.
I
you must
love
be on Zooms a lot because you got this down to a
Oh
science.
yeah, look at the teeth
Yeah.
and the beard,
the
and the hair.
teeth,
Yeah.
I just love
Yeah,
seeing health.
I'm on
The
an island.
headphones.
I'm on an island in Missouri, so I've had to get good with Zoom.
I think
It's-
you took all of Chris's good looks. So I haven't seen him in a little bit, but I think you took his good looks. So
He's doing okay. I took something from him. One last thing I wanted to share just came to mind, and it spawns from Charles's big question. One thing I try to do today to be my authentic self with the most important person in my life, which is my wife, is I'm starting to do emotional check-ins with her. And an emotional check-in on a daily basis is just, hun, here's where I'm at. Here's where my mind is. I've got fear about work, blah, blah, blah. I let it all out. And that just improves our connectivity for the day. So if that's worth anything.
yeah, that's good.
It's amazing.
Yeah, my wife and I don't have a regular check-in like that, but like I can sense the energy of when she's really hurting, and she can with me too. And I sensed it yesterday, and we went in the back room, one of the kids' rooms, and she let it out, and we were back there for an hour and a half, and I was present. I didn't have my phone with me, and I just let her cry on my shoulder and just held her. And it just feels good to be able to do that. Where before I'd be like, oh, it sounds like you need to go talk to the therapist or you need to go figure it out. But now I'm like, I was just there for her. And most of it was just me being there and listening to her and just letting her cry on my shoulder. You know? So I think it's great to have those emotional check-ins and be there for each other and feel like it's a safe place, right? Because it's hard. Relationships are hard. Parenting's hard. You know, life's hard, you know, and it's like we need all these things and tools to get to that place where we can deal with these things, you know, and they're not so life threatening anymore. And we're not like so freaked out and angry or sad all the time. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing that you can do that, Paul, because I think about trying to do that with my now ex-wife, and I just got a dose of, I already got the shame in my belly from it, and I didn't even say anything. So I'm proud of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's just, thank you. And it's just amazing though, how we came to this realization about a month ago, and it was like, I'm always in my head. So, you know, when I say, well, I didn't tell you about that, or she's like, no. Right. I'm like, all of a sudden it's like, wow, I think I tell her stuff. I don't. My head's so far out my butt. So
yeah, I do that all the time. Didn't I tell you that? Didn't we talk about that? And she's like, no. Yeah.
no.
Well, I'm glad you came on. I really appreciate it. We just found out before this podcast that we have over 6,000 listeners. We're in the top 10 podcasts in the world.
10%.
The top 10%.
Yep.
Yeah. And we're shooting to be in the top 5% a year from now. That's our goal. So thanks everyone for listening. If you want a Red Book, please email us. And we are excited to come into the fall with some new guests. Paul kicked off the fall lineup. So thank you, Paul. And please, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, rate us. If you want to come on, please let us know. We'd love to have you on.
More questions too. Let's get some more questions.
Yeah, we'd like that question and answer period. The Dr. Fraser Crane, I think Soraya called it. And let's get that going again. We need to have some call-ins. So if you have any questions for us, send them in the comments, or you can email us, and we will get a call-in show again. We'll have to call it something else. Fraser Crane Part 2, or Soraya will
Dear
call it
Abby.
something. Dear Abby. Dr. Joyce Brothers, one of those. All right. Well, we love you guys. Please be nice to my friend today. And we will see you next week on the laundry list.